Hello and welcome to the PE Insights podcast, conversations about physical education with me, Nathan Walker. Thank you for joining me. You're very, very welcome. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as we delve into another insight around physical education. Yes, hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another episode of the PE Insights podcast. Some really exciting news recently. PE Scholar have taken ownership of the PE Insights podcast. For you, it means that the episodes will continue. For me, it means that I'll continue doing my things. It's just the PE Scholar team are going to help me supercharge the podcast so the reach goes wider and we get to listen to more insights. So an exciting opportunity for everyone involved. Really looking forward to creating some future valuable insight podcast episodes for you all to listen to, enjoy. Thank you for the feedback from everyone so far. Recent episodes of gaining traction and getting some really good comments and inspiring people to change their practice. So that's the intention, and that's what the intention will remain as moving forward. So thank you for joining me again, which leads us into today's episode. Really one that I've been looking forward to doing for a while because I've had lots of conversations with today's guest, Jordan Wintle, over the last couple of years, and I'm really inspired by the work that he is doing and has done, particularly on the topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is meaningful experiences in physical education, and his educational doctorate, where he's looking at meaningful experiences through lifestyle sports and how that can be implemented in PE settings. Jordan is the Associate Head of School for Education and Science at the University of Gloucester and has lots of experience of working in initial teacher education and postgraduate PE teacher education programs. So the aim of today's episode is for Jordan to first of all tell us a little bit about himself, but then more importantly, maybe not more importantly, but the main focus is for him to explain and for us to explore his research around meaningful experiences in PE and what that might look like in secondary settings. So I really enjoyed this one actually, because it's something that I'm very interested in. So hopefully you will enjoy it as much as I did too. Jordan, welcome to the PE Insights podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, Nathan. Great to be here.
Yeah, and really looking forward to this one, mate. So thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come on and chat with us all. So first up, tell us, the listeners and myself, a little bit about your educational journey so far.
Yeah, so let's start with where I am at the moment, so it gives people some context. So at the moment, I'm Associate Head of School for Education and Science at the University of Gloucester. Just recently moved into that role. Mm-hmm. So I have been there for 10 years working in teacher education, undergraduate PE and coaching, and delivering into our postgraduate teacher training programs in physical education as well. Mm-hmm. Going back further than that, so that was 2014 when I joined the University of Gloucester. I never really envisaged myself working in higher education. I started PE teaching in 2005, having done my teacher training with the University of Gloucester as well. So spent nearly 10 years working as a PE teacher, and during that time, second in PE, head of PE for a short time in that period as well. And I had some great colleagues. One of them was called Gareth Sweet, and he'd been in the PE department at the school where I was working for kind of 30 years. And he was kind of my idol. And so I thought, I'm going to do that because I absolutely loved teaching physical education in secondary schools, and thought that I could see myself doing that for the rest of my life. But you got involved with trainees in terms of mentoring trainees in the department and going into the university and doing some guest sessions and stuff like that. And then an opportunity came up to look at going into lecturing or working in higher education full time. So I kind of took that leap of faith, a little bit like yourself, really, Nathan. And haven't looked back since from there. I guess if we go a little bit further back, so like everyone else that I've heard on the podcast, like kind of positive experiences of sport as a child. My parents were brilliant at getting me into kind of every sport going. So I played a lot of football, a lot of cricket, My brother was only 18 months older than me, so I always had someone to play with
competition
in the garden. Yeah, a bit of sibling rivalry and stuff like that, which I know probably relates to lots of the listeners as well. And have just really enjoyed, sport and physical activity being part of my life over that time. So my physical activity habits have changed obviously over the years. So whilst I played a lot of competitive team sports as a youngster, and my schooling was very much in that kind of traditional mold of lots of competitive team sports and all about the school teams doing well and those kind of things. And so I was one of those lucky kids that that really worked for me.
Yeah.
If I look back and think about some of my classmates, I can kind of see now, and I have, over the last 10 years doing this role, seeing that, that kind of model of PE doesn't certainly work for everybody, which has informed some of my work since then that we'll go on to talk about as well. But yeah, I am kind of hyper competitive. I think that comes from my parents. So my parents met at a Man United game, 1978 FA Cup final. So yeah, not much choice to be a United fan. So those of you that might be watching on a video can see Beckham, Ronaldo and George Best up on the wall behind me. So some of the great number sevens that we've had at Old Trafford. It's been a difficult time at Old Trafford for a few years. So yeah, please take sympathy. Please take sympathy on me, and don't hold my club allegiances against me when you're listening to the podcast.
Brilliant, thanks, Jordan. Really, really great introduction, so that the listeners kind of contextualise your viewpoints. Tell us a little bit more about why physical education is important then to young children. What does it mean to you as a subject?
Yeah, so it's that pathway to physical activity, and I guess that's not dissimilar to lots of the people that you've heard on the podcast as well. But it's the friends that I've made through being physically active and involved in sport, and when I've been able to facilitate that for young people under my care through my teaching, you see the positive outcomes that young people are able to achieve from being involved in physical activity, sport, movement, however we want to package that. And I guess for me, it always used to be, I was like, I've got to get kids fit and healthy. That's the purpose of PE. And now I've got into a space over the last probably 10 years where actually that's a secondary outcome for me. And it's more about the pleasure and the joy and the fun and the smiles that we can get through being involved in physical activity and in sport. And so now to me, it's like, why do I take part in all of that stuff? It's actually because I find it really fun and it's enjoyable. And the fact that it keeps me fit and healthy, that's almost like a secondary bonus to that as well. And we know if people are going to stay involved in stuff, it's normally going to be because of the fun, the enjoyment and the satisfaction that they get from it, not necessarily the fact that they're going out and doing something which is going to prolong their life. So it's the old Kretschmar kind of, not only makes your life longer, it makes it better, I guess is the short summary.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think the Kretschmar link or the finishing with the Kretschmar links us nicely into the current work that you're doing. Would you like to share what you're currently doing with the audience?
So I'm kind of coming into land, I hope, on my professional doctorate, which I'm hoping to get submitted certainly this year. And what I've been doing with that is implementing lifestyle sports within physical education through a meaningful PE informed teaching approach. So it's been an action research project that I've been working on for just over 4 years now. And I'm kind of involved in that as a teacher researcher. So what I did last year was I delivered intervention units in 2 schools locally, secondary schools they were, where I implemented some lifestyle sports. So lifestyle sports, some of you hopefully might be familiar, are kind of non-traditional, more about participation than competition. Some examples would be things like parkour, skateboarding, street dance, those kind of sports that are high growth. We know they're high growth. That's, the data is telling us that from participation rates, but they haven't necessarily been adopted in a widespread manner within physical education. So what I wanted to do was to go and try these ideas with some children kind of at the coalface, working alongside teachers in departments as well, and see what the impact was of those units. So yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been a lot of hard work trying to do that alongside a full-time job. But I've been well guided. So I've got 2 supervisors that work with me. So Kira Lewis was my previous head of school. She's now at Birmingham City University, a professor of physical activity. She does a lot of work around motivation, behavior change, has done some work within the physical education space as well. And my other supervisor is one of your previous guests, Liz Durden-Myers, who was also, that physical literacy informed approach that she talked about. As well. So I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and with those two guiding me through the process, we've got to the point where I've collected all of my data. I've began data analysis. I've got a book chapter which is just going in second draft, which should be out in the summer, which is looking at some of the data from that. And I'm presenting at ISEP in Finland in the summer as well. Awesome. It's kind of done well. I can share. Do you want me to talk you through a little bit more of the methods and some of the findings?
I think what I'm interested in, and what the listeners might be interested in, is what would a sequence of learning, a unit of work, whatever you want to call it, look like? Let's just say in Key Stage 3, if it was parkour, but using the meaningful physical education lens, what would that look like?
Yeah. So the unit that I delivered, I came across parkour in about 2012. There was a man called Dan Edwards who was pretty high up in the parkour world. I think he works for Parkour Generations or something like that now.
I met him in Hong Kong, actually, at a conference, at an APEC conference years ago.
Nice. So he did the first ever teacher training CPD in parkour, like kind of official, at the University of Gloucestershire in 2012, and I jumped on it as a teacher. So I kind of got introduced to it then, and picked up a lot of content through that, and then obviously through your own research and practicing, picked up more content that you were kind of shaping into that kind of unit. So the unit that I delivered within the schools worked across 6 weeks. So it would roughly translate to 2 lessons a week within that. The actual school that I delivered it in, we did it slightly differently because of their timetable. But we started off by breaking down parkour into the kind of key components. So the first component we looked at was balance. So we had, a lesson or 2 based around the notion of balance. Then we went on to looking at landing, and part of that was landing and rolling. So we'd have another lesson or a couple of lessons based around that. In each time, it's like a picture in art. You're just adding another layer. Okay. So, we don't obviously forget the stuff that we did in balance. So we go, right, let's take the stuff we did in balance and incorporate it with the landing. Then we look at vaults. So we looked at parkour vaults. And we would then experiment with those and again, add that layer to the picture. From there, we looked at hanging and swinging. So I was fortunate in the school that we had. They had a set of wall bars that were actually well maintained and they were used regularly. So I was able to use like the wall bars, and we looked at hanging and swinging and something called muscle ups, which is basically when you're kind of getting your body weight up and pulling yourself up above a bar or a surface. The kids absolutely loved that. And then we put all this together as we were going through, with the kids then doing low level courses. So, keeping the height quite low, but all the same skills, and then some higher level courses as well. We did a lot of stuff involving tic-tac movements, which are basically when you interact with the wall as well. And then what I was able to do throughout the unit, informed by the meaningful PE approach, was just gradually give more rope out to the students, more autonomy, because their knowledge of the activity was increasing. So, eventually at the end, I was going in their groups, here's some equipment, go and set it up how you like. Give me a shout when it's set up so that I can check safety and all of those kind of things. And then I want you to interact with that equipment in any way you can. And we ended up, the last challenge that we did was I'd given them all an iPad in their groups, and they had to make an Instagram reel that kind of drew it all together and showed me everything that they'd learned over the period that we'd been working on that. As well. And obviously through the meaningful PE approach, I was, we had individual and group goal setting. We made sure that we had time for reflection both within, so kind of the kind of informal reflections when I would go round to each group and ask them how they're getting on, and how can they make it better, how can they make it harder, who's struggling, what can we do to help them. And we obviously then had kind of the reflective periods at the end of lessons. So I would do simple things, really, like I'd put some of the features of meaningful PE up on the board, and I'd ask them to, at the end of the lesson, here's a load of board markers, put a tally next to the 2 that were most important for you today. And that would then just be a conversation starter with maybe a few students a way out. So it would just give me an indication of like what were the elements or features that these guys really valued as well. So that was helpful. And that gradual empowerment that we were able to give throughout the unit as I was able to trust them. And they knew more about the actual activity itself. That was kind of how it was informed. And we did data collection wise with both of the units that I did. So that was the first unit I did. The other unit that I did was a CrossFit and kickboxing hybrid. So we had some more negotiation with the heads of PE in that school about what was feasible. We did want to do skateboarding and we did have some access to equipment, but then we found, it was kind of right. We didn't really have a suitable space, and we didn't have enough equipment for one each. And so that was potentially a barrier. So we drew it back to something slightly different. So, you're being contextually aware. And also when you're working with schools, these schools were really trusting with me. They gave me their classes for 6 weeks and basically said, okay, we're going to trust you, do what you want. They knew me because I've kind of been embedded in the local PE scene for quite a long time. But it was a risk. And, the schools had to do quite a bit of work for me in terms of ethical approval, parental approval, and all those kind of things as well. And the data collection was kind of pretty big. So we had a mixed method and multi-method approach. So there was a meaningful PE questionnaire that I developed that was done with the children pre the unit. So kind of looking at their normal experiences of PE. And then again, when they'd finished the units, just reflecting on the units. So I can talk to you a little bit more about that. We then had the teachers doing observations. So I'd spoken to the teachers over a long period of time, trained them up a little bit in the meaningful PE approach. So we had an observation that they did on me each lesson, looking for the features and pedagogies of meaningful PE. I kept a journal or a reflective journal. So using Rolf's model, I reflected on each lesson. About what now kind of approach. Obviously lots of that was linked to meaningful PE as well. And then at the end of the unit, I had nearly all of the pupils take part in focus groups to talk to me about their experiences, and then in a final interview with the teachers as well. So
lots of data,
as you can see. I went kind of data mad. I wanted to do some mixed method stuff because I wanted to challenge myself. Like, I think I'm quite comfortable in the qualitative space, but not so much in quantitative stuff. So, I've had some good tuition from some of my colleagues on getting back into SPSS and p-values and all of those kind of things, looking at the questionnaire data, which has been really, really good in terms of me learning some new skills and challenging myself, but also to be able to provide some, there hasn't been much quantitative work in meaningful PE.
No. Because of the nature of meaning, I suppose, and it all being about feelings, emotions. So that's been great as well. And in the meaningful PE questionnaire, I think I can talk you through that a little bit because I think it's quite interesting for people to hear about how we developed that. So I wanted a kind of easy questionnaire for the kids to fill out, but robust enough that I could use it for kind of research purposes. There's some meaningful PE questionnaires that are out there for student voice, which, very pupil friendly, user friendly, but probably not at a level to be used in kind of research. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit more robust. So I developed a questionnaire, and I kind of made this from scratch myself, where I had a Likert scale and 3 statements that connected with features or pedagogies of meaningful PE. And they had to rank those on a kind of strongly disagree to strongly agree with a neutral in the middle. So it's a 5-point scale. And
in addition to that, they had 3 statements linked to meaningful PE pedagogy, so the goal setting and reflection, and 3 statements linked to overall meaning of the experience in PE as well. They also had the option to add any of their own features. So there was kind of a space that is like, is there anything else that's important to you? Because, you know, it's not for us to prescribe to young people what they find meaningful. So I know like Tim and Deirdre have kind of said maybe creativity or adventure or health could potentially come into that pot as well. And then we had 2 qualitative statements. So it was, I like PE best when ... And the children had to complete that sentence. And the one thing I would change about PE is ...
Okay.
As well. So we were able to do some qual and quant within that as well.
Can you share any of those or not? Are you allowed to share any of the responses you've got from children and to those 2 questions, those 2 final questions?
I haven't got them. I can think of some offhand. Let me come to. I'll come to that in a second. So what I did with the questionnaire was I took it to what I've called an expert panel. So I'm part of a international community of practice around meaningful PE that includes some of the original authors. Spoke to Steph Benny as well. She wasn't actually part of that group, but obviously her work in meaningful PE has been so pivotal. So kind of got some feedback from kind of some key players in there and made some edits and adaptations to the survey based on their input as well. Then we did some checking. So we had to check. So if you give someone a survey, you need to be confident that they're going to fill out that survey in the same way, you know, if you gave it to them on 2 different days. Yeah. So we did some day-to-day reliability checking. So basically gave the survey to the same group of young people, spaced intervals. So I think it was, they did it on day 1, day 5 and day 10. And then we compared their answers to see how similar they were. So that actually came back that the survey itself had quite strong day-to-day reliability. So that was good. It meant that we could use it. We did some pilot testing with Key Stage 3 groups so that we knew that the language and all those, it was understandable, it was user-friendly. It took about somewhere between 7 to 14 minutes to complete for most young people. So, you know, not too long, but long enough that, you know, they need to sit down and spend a decent amount of time on it.
Just right, maybe.
Yeah, I guess, And then we had to look at kind of the intra-statement reliability. So if you were looking at, let's say, challenge, and we had 3 statements connected to challenge, we should get pretty similar answers to those 3 statements if that feature is important for that child. So then once we'd got the survey completed, we had to then look at that reliability between the statements, which again came back quite strongly. So this was a lot of time spent on SPSS using some calculations that are quite complex. I don't think they need to go into too much detail in the pod, just to keep people engaged. But the outcome was that we found that this questionnaire was fairly reliable, it was user friendly, and that we could make some judgments based on the data from this questionnaire that we could be reasonably confident that they were reliable. So when we did that and we looked at the different units, so we basically had parkour was like a big responder in this particular school that I worked in. So we had kind of statistically significant improvements for competence, for fun, for challenge, for choice, for overall meaning, and for MPE pedagogy. So there was, you know, some strong indicators within the data there that this parkour unit delivered through a meaningful PE approach did have a very positive effect in terms of the features and the overall meaning of that unit for those young people involved. Slightly different story in the CrossFit and the kickboxing stuff as well. So competence actually went down. And, you know, the explanation for that is that they were probably doing an activity that none of them had been exposed to before. So that, you know, it's no surprise then that someone would feel less competent than perhaps something that they'd been doing for a number of years. So that was okay. Choice was one that was pretty close to statistically significant, but wasn't. And I guess the difference between the 2 schools was that the second school where I did the CrossFit kickboxing, inadvertently, they were already doing a lot of stuff that would look like meaningful PE. Just good practice, you know, good practice PE stuff that they picked up. Now, the teachers, when I spoke to them, didn't know that it would fall under the meaningful PE umbrella, but it was just, it was in with the ethos of the department in those. And they had already had some implementation of some different activities and stuff in that school, whereas the parkour school was very traditional. So it was a big step change in there. as well. So that's why, but even within the CrossFit and the kickboxing, I could see within the data that there were some children, you had kind of responders and non-responders. So whilst collectively the picture wasn't quite as clear, you could see that actually taking part in the CrossFit kickboxing hybrid unit, for some pupils, it was a real big positive and a big difference to what they would experience in normal PE as well. So that was kind of the summary of the statistical data that came out from those as well. I'm still working through some of the qualitative analysis, but I've done some bits of that.
Yeah.
So looking at the sit downs with the teachers when we did the interviews at the end, some great insights from there. And I've been able to look at the reflections as well. So essentially the teachers were kind of looking at how some of these lifestyle sports through a meaningful PE approach kind of do align very well with what people articulate as their kind of the purpose of PE. So it was, it was all about, their purpose of a PE was similar to ours, that it was, about encouraging the physically active lifestyle, and that they could see the potential for these types of activities to be more integrated into the school curriculum, particularly when you marry them with a complementary approach. As well, which was kind of the second theme that came out, was that actually the activity was really important because it was something new, novel, and it connected with youth culture in those kind of things. But actually linking the activity with the approach was actually kind of almost like a catalyst that made the fire burn brighter, I guess, for some of those young people. And when we talk about learning within some of these, particularly in like lifestyle sports like parkour and skateboarding, traditionally the learning in those sports in the real world is very organic. So, you don't often have a parkour coach working with a group. I know they do exist. So, but, a lot of learning in those sports is like kind of nail it or fail it, give it a try, repetition. So what we tried to do with the units is try and use that meaningful PE approach to almost recreate, with some boundaries around safety, but try and recreate that kind of organic learning that would happen for those sports in their natural environment. And so that, the theme that came out of that was linking the activity with the approach.
Yeah. That's one thing. One thing that was like springing to mind when I'm listening to you talk about that was, would it have had the same effect if those activities were used with a more, for want of a better word, traditional approach to teaching? If they just took the activity and broke the skills down and did skill development, would it have had the same impact for those children as when you've done it with a meaningful PE approach?
It's a good question. I guess if I really wanted to look at just the activity, I would have had to isolate that and make sure that the teaching approaches were kind of more traditional, teacher led, directed. Right, here's this type of vault. I want everybody to do this. Off you go. Whereas, I still did teach people techniques. So, but I'd go down the route of kind of exploration before explanation. So it would be, there's a box. Can you, as a group, work out how many different ways you can get over that? And the parameter for success is obviously you've got to get over the box, but also I want it to look efficient, smooth, all those kind of things as well. And then if children come to a point there where they got to a point where like they're stuck, that's when I would go in and say, okay, here's one example here's a step vault, for example. And I would give them a little demonstration, a walkthrough, and then say, right, off you go, you can have a go. But I didn't want that to be the starting point of the delivery in those environments as well. So it was. And I don't think, just because we're going for an approach that gives some autonomy and agency, it's not hanging them out to dry with no support. There's a difference between that. So it's being able to spot, the teachable moments, or when it's right to go and intervene. But my first intervention normally would always be with a question.
Rather than direct instruction.
I
think it's absolutely right, isn't it? Because I think when some people look at meaningful PE, the kind of focus straight away is it's autonomy, it's agency, it's democratic, it's student voice. It's maybe more standoffish from the teacher. That's absolutely not true, because developing competence is one of the key features of meaningful PE, and we have the ability to control that. And if going in and providing some clear instruction is how you do that, then great. It's not a call for the opposite at all.
No, and it's about spotting the right moment. I guess it's something which, we look for, but in terms of that as well, my priority filter for decision making in those moments would have traditionally been, right, let's look for the kids that are doing it wrong and go and get him and help them straight away. And I guess what I had to do, which was different to when I probably taught 10 years ago, was remember, my priority filter is the features and pedagogies of meaningful PE. So when I'd set people off on a task and I step back for a couple of minutes, which I'd encourage everyone to do, is actually my decision making was based on the features of meaningful PE. So where can I see where they're happening? Where can I see where they might not be happening? And that's where I would go first to intervene in some way to try and help that as well. And also, it's not up to me to decide what meaningful PE features are relevant for any group. So I'm trying to let them guide some of that. It's very difficult. I've found sometimes there were times when I was trying to use this approach where I felt a bit uncomfortable. Because it's something that was relatively new to me, although I would say my understanding around it is quite good. And it fits with kind of my values and my ethos. So it maybe comes more naturally than perhaps it might do for some other people as well. But that depends where it sits. And that was kind of the final theme that came out from some of the reflections and the data that I collected from the teachers, was that there were barriers and enablers to this. And one of the enablers was that it fits with, the ethos of the department, but not just the department, but the ethos of the school, and then the ethos of the individual teacher as well. So it's kind of, that kind of macro to micro kind of scale as well. So that was important. And there were, clearly, I was lucky that the schools probably did have a good ethos because they'd invited me in to do this. There were some schools that said no. I went out to a few schools and they said, really, we can't fit it in our curriculum, or those kind of things. So that's there as well. The other point that came out around the delivery was kind of teacher competence and their ability to deliver parkour or their ability to deliver CrossFit or kickboxing. That was something that for them, they sat back and were like, oh, well, I'd need to, if I wanted to do this, I'd need to do some homework or some CPD to be able to do that. So, there's been some work around lifestyle sport development in kind of teacher education programs. So
really important.
So Tom Leader and Lee Beaumont, who are both at University of UEL, I think, on the far side of the country, over in the East, they've done some work around teacher CPD. Within that, and it is something which is growing, but it's not common practice. So I do, with my undergrads, we have a whole unit on non-traditional activities in meaningful PE as well, so they're pretty lucky. But I know if you speak to lots of practicing teachers, it's out of their comfort zone. We would need that. And the other point that came across was funding. So it's no secret that school budgets are pretty tight, certainly here in the UK. And that for some of these activities, you do need some specialist equipment. So I was lucky for parkour, we were using lots of gymnastics equipment, so it was kind of there already. But for the kickboxing unit, I had to take equipment from the university that we had to be able to facilitate that. So, focus pads, mitts, kick shields, and effectively, if you wanted to run that unit with enough equipment for one class, you'd need £1,000 worth of equipment. And for some schools, that's just a blocker straight away. It's a barrier. So, which is really sad. But we've also got to be realistic about the world that we're living in. When there's we've got to make some tough decisions sometimes.
That's thank you so much, Jordan. That's really insightful. Loved listening to that. And good luck with the rest of it. Hopefully that it's a big deal. So congratulations for the work you've done so far. Just off the back of that, then you've kind of alluded to what you believe might be good practice, but I just want you to kind of encourage teachers. If you were to encourage teachers with your teacher educator hat on, day to day, what can they do in practice or in their daily lives that's going to be, what are your golden bits of advice for them? Yeah,
I guess the first one for me is kind of pupils first. and you know what? I used to find out so much about pupils and what they like and what they don't like when I was on duty. And I'd be stood out the front. I'd be stood out the front of the sports hall at the school I was working at normally with a cup of coffee, which back in those days you could have a cup of coffee without a lid on it. And just chatting to the pupils and try and chat to the pupils that aren't just the sporty ones, because it's really, really easy. And I connected really well, like most PE teachers do, with the kids that are like them. But try and chat to the kids that aren't like you. And that would be something that I would really encourage. I had a conversation. And I try and encourage trainees to do the same.
I had a conversation with Greg Dryer recently who said exactly the same things. He said the ones that come and knock on the PE staff room door aren't the ones that we need to be worried about so much. It's the ones that we don't interact with that we need to be making a conscious effort to do so.
Yeah, great advice. I've got two more for you, Nathan, as long as we've got time for those. So the second one is don't be afraid to try something new. And with that, I guess, is the caveat is like, don't worry if it doesn't work first time. If we're going to develop practice, whether it's, new activities, new approaches, those kind of things, don't be afraid to try something new. And if anyone stands in your way and says, oh no, we can't do that, the way that I've found to get around that is just say to anybody that it's a trial. It's a trial and we'll see how it goes. And most people that are pretty reasonable will let you do that. And if you can show something that works or show that it works for some pupils, then, you don't know where that might lead to next as well.
Love that.
And the final one was basically look after yourself. In the busy world of teaching that we live in, my wife's still a teacher. It's a really demanding job, but it's the most important job in the world. And you can only do it really well if you're looking after yourself. So take time out for you and do whatever you like to do as your hobbies, your interests, to make sure that you're in a good place for the children on a Monday morning. Yeah,
here. My wife's still a teacher and she would completely agree with that as well, and as do I. I've got written down next to me, remember to ask a question about the 5 things that annoy Jordan about PE, Twitter or X. So off the back of that health warning, do you want to expand on that, those things that annoy you about the PE space on Twitter or X?
I mean, I've been on, I don't know how long, I'd have to go and look at my profile. I think I've been on PE Twitter for about 10 years. And I love lots about it. So that's the first caveat about this is, it's a great place. Lots of people supporting each other, sharing good practice, bits of research and those kind of things. But I guess some health warnings, that might be useful for people to recognize and remember. First one is that there's only probably a small percentage of PE teachers that are actually on Twitter. When I work with departments and, I quite often mention, that element of, you on Twitter and those kind of things. And probably most of the PE teachers that I speak to aren't on Twitter. So I guess that's just remember that most PE teachers aren't on Twitter. So if you're trying to put something out there, it might not reach all of the people that you want it to reach. And I guess from my point of view as a researcher, just because I put something on Twitter, it doesn't mean that it's getting to the coalface. So we maybe have got to be more creative about how we get those messages to the front line. And this platform is a great example of one of the avenues that we could use to get there better. So I guess that's the first one. The second one is, again, like FOMO, so fear of missing out. So when I first started on PE Twitter, I used to try and catch up with everything that had happened on PE Twitter. And I think now I probably follow over 1,000 people. Like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to keep up with everything that is going on PE Twitter online. I think of PE teacher Twitter is Twitter in general, basically like a river. And sometimes if you're fishing in one spot, sometimes you just got to kiss goodbye to the stuff that was further down the line. If it was really good or it was that important, it will come back round again. So, don't spend half your life scrolling through Twitter as well, I guess, would be something to think about there. Couple of other ones, I guess these are little ball ones that might grind my gears a little bit. Opinion gaining greater traction than robust research. So, I know it's always good to have debate and those kind of things, but I've seen some opinion that gets thrown out and people will jump all over it. And yet I see a piece of research that probably someone's put in years and years of work to get out there, and it basically just goes on by and no one really notices. So again, just another kind of health warning. Just be critical, just stick your critical hat on when you're looking at stuff. And I guess that comes out as well. So there's a couple of other bits. So a resource pylon. I have, I'm all for teachers helping teachers, but, be aware that sometimes the resources that you see on Twitter are really good. Sometimes they're not so good. And I see sometimes people jumping on board a not so good resource. And I'm thinking, oh God, please don't use that with your pupils. So yeah, just, keep that critical hat on. What works in one context might not always work in yours.
Yeah. And you see a thread a thread of like 160 email addresses saying, can I have a copy?
Yeah. Be careful with your GDPR on that as well. Everyone will be after your data. Yeah. And I guess the last one that I'd written down was sharing of inappropriate, poor practice or out of context practice. So sometimes I see some stuff on Twitter where they're sharing stuff that's clearly from like an academy sports kind of environment, and that might not always transfer into a PE context as well. So again, it's just, looking at something, having that critical lens to just go, right, would that work in my context with my children? Would I need to tweak it for it to be able to work as well? So yeah, just being aware of the limitations, I guess, of Twitter would be some of those points that we've covered on there as well. And what, I speak to my trainees about this. It's like, I'm on Twitter because I get more value out of it than I do the negative stuff as well. But equally, I'm probably spending less time on there because it sometimes annoys me a little bit that things that are inappropriate or that. But I'm not really one for calling people out on Twitter because I don't know people, I don't know their context. And so, if it's not for me, I'm happy to leave it, but I am happy to kind of try and educate people to just look at stuff through a critical lens.
Yeah. Fantastic. Some sage advice, Jordan. Really, really appreciate that. So I think that kind of brings us to a close on the episode. It's been full of absolute gold dust, I think. Your research around the meaningful PE and what you're doing with lifestyle activities, the advice on, how to use the platform that some of us use, but not all of us use is really good advice as well. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts and your insights. I've really appreciated the conversation. Yeah,
no worries. It's great. A stellar lineup of guests. It's good to join the list and be alongside some great people on there as well. And keep doing the good work, Nathan, because I think giving people a voice that is a different avenue for people to explore through a different platform, I think is great work and really important.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Jordan.